of this conflicting information. I think it has the viewers confused. It certainly has the families confused. You know, here's what happens. We check out various reports. They have to be confirmed. They have to be checked out. But it has led to a massive confusion. Now, let's take the Reuters report that the plane was deliberately turned. We've known that since at least last Sunday. We know that in any event, someone, the pilot, the co-pilot, or someone else perhaps, had to change the course. That's how planes work. So it was definitely a deliberate change of course, but it's been interpreted by Malaysian authorities as a possible attempt by the pilot to return back to Kuala Lumpur. It wasn't a perfect turn. In other words, he didn't turn back enough. But then the course doesn't seem to change as the plane heads to the Indian Ocean. The Andaman Islands are just on the way. Yes, there are radar waypoints there, but that's perhaps only a coincidence. Let's talk about the confusion when we hear that did the plane fly 4, 5 hours? Did it go 2,000 miles, 2,500 miles? Well, a lot of that depends on how many hours times the airspeed. That's how it's calculated. We haven't been given the exact number of hours. We don't know what the full range of the plane was. So people are guessing at those numbers, and different numbers come out. Then we get the very unlikely things, and that is like the students at a Chinese university saying that they heard sonic indicators that they thought it was linked to a plane going into the South China Sea. These are the kind of things. This is an area that's already been searched over and over again. Very unlikely that it is actually linked to this flight. Now, there's some good news in all of this, Maggie. We're finally looking in the place where the plane probably is. They've analyzed the data records. They've got the data that's going to the satellites that gives the plane's location, or it gives it its heading, it gives its airspeed, and other data that is going to be crucial. We have some of the radar data. We'll get more from Indonesia, perhaps from the United States on Diego Garcia Island. It will further tell us where this airplane went. They have to assemble that and put it all together. So it is very confusing. There's an upside. We've known for a while now that this plane changed course, and CNN reported it on Wednesday that the plane headed towards the Indian Ocean. It is nowhere near the South China Sea. We can stop looking there. Back to you, Maggie.
All right, Jim Clancy, thank you very much, and let's hope you're right. Let's hope we are starting to get on the right track. To help me break down all of the latest developments in the hunt for the missing aircraft, we are joined by Mary Schiavo, the former Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Transportation. Mary, thank you so much for being with us. I just, based on everything we just heard, you can understand why almost everyone we talk to is confused and frustrated about why we don't know where this plane is. Based on the equipment on the planes, based on the technology we have today, should there be this much confusion? Do we feel confident that this latest information and this latest area of search is accurate?
The latest information is really the best that we have, and it has so many parallels to the investigation of Air France 447. There, the plane, it was a different plane, it was an Airbus, but it did the same sort of thing. The plane itself takes its, assesses its health, if you will, and sends these data messages out. In the case of Air France, they subscribed to the service where these full messages were sent back to the company saying, this is working, this is not working, this is going wrong, etc. And we have the computer printout. In this case, Malaysian Air didn't subscribe to that service, so all we have are these like directional pinpoints. It's like 4 pinpoints on a map. But that gives us an idea of where the plane was going. So we have 5 things we know for sure. We know it took off and it made a turn. Either it started to turn back, but anyway it turned. We have a second waypoint on the next small little island past Malaysia. Then we have these 4 pings. So we have the direction in which it was going. You can also figure out the airspeed and most likely the fuel consumption based on these waypoints. So I'm actually encouraged. This is probably the most concrete information we've had in the last 7 days, and at least they now have a reason to look where they're looking.
Right, and we're hoping that we're getting closer. Richard Quest also joins us right now, who's been following this story minute to minute. Richard, I want you to talk about the idea now that increasingly the focus is on the pilots, and I know you've personally met the co-pilot, and that they are somehow involved in this. We're hearing the word hijacking come up a lot. What should we know about this line of the story?
Nothing, frankly. Absolutely nothing. To go down, Maggie, the truth is, and I'm curious to hear Mary's take on this as well. The truth is, we've got these pings and we've got these waypoints, and they suggest that the plane flew a particular orderly pattern, a flight path of some description. But we do not know if it was by manual, although I find that very hard to believe. Planes at altitude are rarely flown with precision manually. It is almost always on the autopilot. And therefore, if so, who set it, how and why? And to make the leap that the pilots were somehow involved, look, they may well be. But at this point of the game, at this point of the investigation, an investigation, incidentally, which is starting to come together in a much more professional fashion, it would appear, but we cannot make the leap that you're suggesting that we make.
I knew you were going to say that, Richard, and that's why I asked you to set the record straight on this, because it is one of the many lines of sort of confusion and misinformation and, frankly, speculation that's going on. But, Mary, you can understand why that's happening, because we're so many days into this investigation. We've been over here. We've been over there. I mean, nothing has been concrete, so that opens up for speculation. How much is that going to delay things now? Can we assume that now the information we're getting from this point is accurate and can be trusted? And what do you make of the pilot's involvement?
Well, I always find, and I do this from personal experience, is when you don't know what to do, they just blame the pilot. The NTSB, not a big criticism of the NTSB, when they have to throw up their hands and say, we don't know what caused it, we're going to blame the pilots, that is so often wrong. And in at least 2 cases that I've worked on, we've actually been able to disprove the NTSB conclusions when they blame the pilots. You know, I know pilots' families, for example, in one case where they blame the pilot, the 737 rudder hardover, took 7 years. It was one of the longest unsolved cases in the history of the NTSB. It was dirty hydraulic fluid. So it's very dangerous to just say, oh, it's the pilot's fault. There's a lot of times a deep mechanical reason, and you just have to dig, and it's important for safety to keep digging and find what that is. Otherwise, we're still at jeopardy if we don't solve the mystery.
And that is a very good point. Richard, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. And again, we don't know any of the answers, but are we operating on the best case scenario at this point, that there was some sort of crash, that we are going to find this plane in the ocean? Or are we hanging on to hope that because there are some islands nearby, that somehow this is a search and rescue mission? I know the Malaysian authorities are saying it is. What should we think about that?
On CNN New Day in the United States, the local reporter, local editor of the Andaman Islands newspaper, basically said there is no way and no evidence and no reports of any plane, let alone a 777, landing in the Andaman Islands. The US officials have said that there is a significant possibility, they are working on the basis from information from the Malaysians, that there is a significant possibility that the aircraft is on the bottom, in their words, of the Indian Ocean. It is unfortunate, unpalatable, and unpleasant to have to say this on television, but the strongest indication remains that either in the South China Sea or in the Indian Ocean or the Strait of Malacca, that the plane came down.
All right, Richard Quest and Mary Schiavo, setting us straight and giving us the very latest accurate information and read on this Malaysian disappearance. Thank you both so much. Coming up, the 11th hour diplomacy in the Ukraine crisis as the clock ticks down.